Your face has
Welcome
appeared.
all. Welcome all. Faces appeared. Uh, Welcome all to the July 25th, 2025 edition of Legal Tech Week, the show where we talk about the top stories of the week in legal tech. And we've got a lot to talk about. I was dubbing this the hallucination hullabaloo episode of the show because we've got what, four different hallucination stories to talk about. So a bunch of stories that raise the question of whether lawyers are committing malpractice in their use of AI. But then we also have a story on whether lawyers who aren't using AI are committing malpractice. So we can talk about both sides of that coin, I guess. And then we're also going to talk about some other stuff, including, I guess, some of us were at American Association of Law Libraries annual meeting this week in Portland, Oregon. And we can talk a little bit about that. So our panelists today, starting from my upper left of the Brady Bunch box here, is Niki Black. Want to kick it off, Niki?
Do if I can unmute myself here. My name is Niki Black. I'm the Principal Legal Insight Strategist at AffiniPay, parent company of MyCase, LawPay, CasePeer, and DocketWise, and I write legal tech columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, and the Daily Record, and I also write my LinkedIn newsletter, Legal Tech Reality Check, and I also oversee and write our AffiniPay our legal industry report, our annual report, and also this year the personal injury legal industry report. I'm excited to talk about lying AIs. That'll be great.
All right. Well, after all the things Niki does, we're out of time, and that does it for today's show. But
See you, everybody.
but Steve, what are the long list of things you do?
I don't do shit. What can I say?
That's not true. I saw you doing shit this week. So.
I feel like you do more and more shit lately than usual.
Well, I certainly am full of more shit than usual. That's
You're not
for sure. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads, and I also write from time to time for Above the Law.
All right. And Julie, welcome.
Hi everyone, Julie Shabawali here from Canada. If I'm not smiling as much as I usually do, it's because I had my wisdom teeth removed last week. But I just missed you all. Too many weeks I've missed, and it's like I want to talk about hallucinations. I love talking about hallucinations. I write for the Canadian Bar Association, Canadian lawyer, fun magazine called The Walrus, which is a general interest publication here in Canada, and lots of other places. Working on 4 articles right now, and none of them actually are about hallucinations, but they are about AI. Yeah, good to see you all.
Good. Well, I'm sure you've retained your wisdom, if not your wisdom teeth. Joe, how about you?
Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer. I am still in Portland, so I've not returned from the conference yet, but it was a good show. I'm heading back tomorrow, yeah, so I'm still on West Coast time, so it's weird. I'm recording this at noon. It's a little off. I don't know. This is usually like the end of my day, not the middle of it.
But hopefully you're able to start drinking anyway. No, okay. And Stephanie.
Yeah, I felt that way last week too when I was in Portland. But I'm gonna have to start making things up because I have the shortest intro of all of us. I'm Stephanie Wilkins. I am the director of content at Legal Tech Hub.
All right. Well, like I said, lots to talk about this week, but since we are several of us recently back from Portland or still in Portland, I thought we'd start with just kind of a recap of AALL conference. Steve, Stephanie, Joe, and I were there, and we missed having the others of you there. But I guess, I always like going to that conference in part just because, it's become an important tech conference, and I think a lot of people don't think of it as that. And in part just because I think the role of the law librarian is not fully appreciated in terms of their kind of gatekeeper status around tech, especially in law firms or other organizations. And I felt like that was kind of on display there. I mean, one of the best programs I went to at the conference was the panel. There was a panel on benchmarking AI that kind of talked about some of the different benchmarking studies that had been done so far for AI and legal research and other tools, and that gave some tips for benchmarking going forward. I can talk a little bit more about that maybe, but I think that was just a great example of the kind of like really meaty stuff you get into at the AALL conference. All that said, I felt it was somehow a little lighter this year than past years. I think the attendance was down a little bit. I don't know about I never got numbers on the exhibit hall. It seemed like a fairly full exhibit hall, but wasn't a whole lot exciting stuff going on there in terms of product announcements or anything like that. And probably with ILTA coming up in a few weeks, that's to be expected because everybody's saving stuff for ILTA, I suppose. But I don't know. What did you all who were there? What did you all think of it?
It was my first time doing it. I thought it was really good. I have an omnibus article coming out about it later today. I wasn't able to get it finished before the show started. But yeah, no, I think that as a vendor hall, I think it was a busy vendor hall, but not an active one as far as announcements. And I think a lot of that is the law librarian role tends not to be the buyer in this situation. However, they are probably the fiercest internal constituency that you could help nurture as a vendor. So
The super
everyone's there.
users. Yeah.
What?
They're the super users.
Yeah, exactly. And they're people who care and people who are senior enough within the firm structure that they can actually, when they lean on somebody to do something, it might actually happen. So I think it's valuable from that perspective. I think the vendor hall is a little bit more of a petting zoo than some other conferences where it was really lots of demos, lots of people trying to figure things out, more so than usual, because these are the folks who need to make the case for using it. Otherwise, and what my article will talk more about is otherwise, I thought it was a interesting conference. And to speak to your point about it being less attended, it was my first one, but I also heard that there were fewer people there. And the scuttlebutt, the rumors I heard were that a lot of it was the product of some bubbling tensions between the public side and the private side, that a lot of the folks on the public side feel like they're very embattled right now and aren't getting the support from their colleagues within the professional organization, which makes some sense. But I can also understand why the private side folks might not feel they have the freedom of movement to do much. So it's an unfortunate situation, but I heard that was a lot of it. So
I think you can, and I agree with both of you guys on it. It's a conference that I go to every year, and like you, Bob, it's one of my favorite ones because of the. It's just a different mix of people. The librarians are more. I don't want to say laid back, but they're certainly less pretentious than what you see at maybe Legal Week and some of them. They're just kind of like, hey, we do our jobs and, this is what we do and we're proud of what we do. And so I like being there. I thought the attendance was down. One thing that I thought and heard from a couple of people was the fact that it was in Portland. No offense, Joe, but for people on the eastern half of the country where there's a lot of population and law firms, that's a long trek, and it's a long trek both in terms of cost and in terms of time, and so
And very few direct flights.
and very few direct flights.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe that had something to do with it. I also wonder if maybe there's some economic constraints that are being applied as people are starting to wonder, and maybe firm leaders and firm management are starting to wonder, like, how necessary is this library function when we've got this great new AI tool, which I think is unfortunate, but I wonder if there's some of that going on. So let's not spend any more money than we have to, kind of, on physically sending somebody to a conference. But who knows? It was a good. I went to some of the panels. They were really good and really interesting. The keynote I know you wrote about the keynote, Bob, and I thought that was a good article, and it was a really rousing keynote. I have to say that.
Well, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say about the keynote. I actually think the keynote was rousing. I almost feel like it spoke to kind of that tension we were talking about between the groups, because I think he did a good job of kind of selling. It was a locker room speech for made you want to kind of run through a wall for librarians, and I think
Right.
it was trying to bring together the like, hey, we're all in this together, even if we have different constraints. So.
Yeah, I sort of wondered about that because, last year they had Cory Doctorow speak. And when I saw who this guy was, like, who is this guy now? Exactly what? But as it turned out, he was a very good speaker and an interesting speaker as well. Sorry, Stephanie, I cut you off and didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say my takeaways in my column, but I was also very pro librarian in general in this. But yeah, I did what I like to do at exhibit halls and just sort of ask the people just how was the show for you, And I feel like there's been a lot of grumbling at a lot of shows recently about people not necessarily liking their exhibit halls, but this one to a T, every exhibitor was like, it's been great, super positive. Um, definitely a sense that it was more academic heavy, but yeah, people definitely seemed good about it. And I like it. I like the conference too, because it is a different group of people than we always all see there. And yeah, like one session I sat in that I really liked, that I looked up 5 minutes in and Joe was there at a different table, which made sense. I should have figured. It was on like critical media literacy and dispelling disinformation, and how, and they had a guy who he was a sociologist after my own heart, who basically likened conspiracy theories to cults and like all of this stuff, and how hard it is to combat misinformation and disinformation right now. But like, hey, law librarians, you're great at this, you should do this. So yeah, I definitely am falling still in the camp of yay librarians. I mean, I'm going back to my early law firm days when the law librarian was the most magic person in the firm, because they could find everything and they could help me with everything ridiculous thing a partner sent me to go do. So I've always been pro them, and I don't think AI will replace them, but I think they are well suited to guide everybody else through AI as they refuse to learn it.
But just noting that Hayden's in the audience, who was an actual exhibitor in the exhibit hall,
Yeah.
so he can give us that perspective. But on that buyer question that you pointed out, Joe, that the idea that law librarians aren't necessarily direct buyers, I think that really points to kind of the whole changing nature of legal tech, because they did used to be buyers, and I'm sure they are to some extent, but that a lot of what was at that conference in the past was really focused on legal research services. And they were the direct buyers of legal research services, or very much involved in decision making around that. And I've been going to this conference for longer than I care to admit, but because way back when I first started publishing about legal tech, the first publication I ever started, I introduced at the AALL conference way back when. And back in the day, the party Thomson Reuters would throw at AALL would be like bigger than any Thomson Reuters party at any other event you'd ever go to. They would throw this really wild gala with all sorts of swag and fancy stuff. That no more of those days anymore. But so I guess the point is that as legal tech has evolved, and as kind of this whole the last couple of years, we've kind of seen legal research services kind of becoming these bigger things. VLEX and Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis, all of them are becoming these sort of all-in-one platforms for AI and different workflows and everything else. So I think that's somewhat reflected in that role of the buyer.
The other thing that I noticed is an interesting mix of people in that, most of the attendees on the law firm librarian size would tend to come from larger firms, but then you had a healthy mix of sort of academic law librarians that worked at law schools, and I thought there's been a lot more of those kind of people there than most shows that I go to. So it's kind of made for some interesting discussions.
Yeah, and I think that's what the comments were getting at, that I was hearing, that they like the people at the booths were getting a lot more interaction with the academic side, the academic attendees, which
Yeah.
they found really interesting, again, because it's like you said, it's
Yeah.
not as many buyers as this show, but people genuinely interested in wanting to see products or services or whatever they are and how they work.
Yeah, the law school librarians seem to be, of course, they're a lot closer to the law students and what's going on at that level and what it's like when they come out. And then at the law firm librarians, they get a lot of that too. And so they had this kind of this synergy of interests around what the hell's wrong with these young people.
Yeah. But that's
Get off
also
my grass.
part of that sort of simmering dissension or whatever it is within that organization, because there are it's been a historical truth for this organization. It has to deal with these three kind of disparate groups: the private law firm librarians, the academic librarians, and the government librarians, or kind of public sector librarians. And they are they're all serving the same job effectively, but serving very different audiences, or customer bases, if you want to call them that. And I think that's been some of the tension. I know I had the Cornell Winston, who just was the outgoing president, who just wrapped up his term as president at this meeting. I had him on my podcast a while ago, a month or so ago, and kind of asked him about that. And because there was talk, I think, of the private law librarians starting to form their own group or breaking off to form their own group. And I mean, he acknowledged that that's kind of a tightrope they have to walk, but that it's one they've walked for a long time, and that at the same time he feels like the blend of those different groups make the overall organization richer at the same time. So it's an interesting dynamic at play there.
Yeah, and I get into this in the article I keep referencing that isn't done yet. But the the keynote kind of theme, no one was overtly political, I would say, but it hung over everything, kind of the political overtones of like budget cuts and book bannings and stuff like that. And the idea, and this goes to that tension we were talking about between the public side and the private side, the real risk, and I think what part of the rah-rah aspect of the keynote was about was that this things are real easy to fall things get real easy to fall apart when communities start to be atomized. That's a way in which you can screw things up, if you divide and conquer. And I think part of what they were trying to get across is if the private folks and the public folks start thinking we don't need each other, that just makes both of them easier to crush. And so I think a lot of what was going on was trying to get people on board with the idea that even if we can't all do the same things at the same time, we are all, as professionals, in the same boat somehow. And at least that was kind of my takeaway from it. I hope that came across to all the different constituencies of actual librarians.
All right. Well, given all the numbers of times that we've talked about the dangers of AI hallucinations on this show, you would think that the legal profession, most of which watches this show every week, would have gotten the message by now. But instead, it seems like hallucinations are like spreading like kudzu or something, instead of getting any better. And Joe, you've like spent your week as the official hallucination reporter for Above the Law.
It's real bad. I did not intend to write because I was at this conference. I intended to write about it all week, and instead I kept being pulled aside to talk about hallucinations. I think I wrote 5 stories about it as of middle of yesterday, just different stuff. So where to even begin? I guess I'll do a quick rundown, and we can dive into any of them specifically or talk about generally what's up with hallucinations this week. But the first off, we had I guess first off, I'll just say last week we talked about the pretentious lawyer who, apologized for using AI, but also talked about how law is like a lump of clay that he leaves an indelible mark upon. So as it turns out, the judge was not impressed by all that pretentious language, and indeed actively trolled him, writing an order where she includes things like to borrow from him, Macbeth would say, like she was quoting Shakespeare stuff to just kind of troll how over the top pretentious it was. But she also noted that she found she ended up finding that he had misquoted some things in his apology, which not great when you're trying to do that. So she isn't happy, wants him to come in for another talk with the principal. But we also had um, a real fire break, I think. I think we talked about a few weeks ago, I talked about there being a real fire break jumping that happened when a judge signed off on an opinion that had fake stuff in it, rather than getting it caught at that initial adversarial stage as one of the new risks. Another one of those fire breaks got crossed when a judge put out an opinion that they then clawed back. A federal judge in New Jersey clawed back an opinion that they put out that it was pointed out while the law in it was not necessarily wrong. There were a lot of misquotes cited to the wrong districts. One of the sites was to the southern. This was a New Jersey court, and there was a New Jersey case in it, but they cited it as though it was the Southern District of New York, because New Jersey people are always trying to say they're from New York, but when they really aren't. But but it got clawed back. That's new. Judges haven't been the vector for these sorts of hallucinations before, so that's not great. Uh, we also had the Butler Snow story that I talked about when it first broke, hallucination issue in a Department of Corrections case down in Alabama. The follow on that happened with the judge finally putting out an order that actually had some teeth in it. We talked about how maybe we're a little too light on the sanctions these days. Now that people actually know that this can happen and that it's bad, maybe we can ratchet those up a little bit. And this judge did, disqualifying 3 of the senior lawyers from continuing in the case. Even though the state of Alabama said they wanted them to be their counsel, she said, I understand the value of honoring a client's request, but no, you put fake cases out there. You don't get to play anymore. She also, in the decision, let the associates off the hook completely, which I thought was nice in a profession where usually those are the people who get thrown under the bus first. But it also wasn't their fault. It was the senior people's fault for inserting the wrong cases. And then the final one was in Chicago. The Chicago Housing Authorities challenging a verdict against them for lead paint that they've allegedly apparently knew about since 1992 and never did anything about. As I put it, you don't get to kind of claim ignorance if you found out something when End of the Road was charting. But they're trying to challenge that, and they challenged it with a bunch of fake stuff. The lawyer who is blamed for that, actually wrote an article about the ethics of AI. So, oops. And they've already been fired from the firm. But I've not actually had a chance to dig into it. But what would be my 6th article this week, if I get a chance to it, if not, it'll be next week, is I did see that the plaintiffs in that case just filed a motion for sanctions of their own there that seems to say that there are other deeper problems going on at Goldberg Segala. So there may be more to that one yet.
And I liked how you worked in jumping the fire break. It's kind of an Oregon thing, as opposed to a New York kind of
I
thing.
got the whole wildfire thing going. Yeah, no, but I mean that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like we've been relying on opposing counsel to stop things before they get too far, and it fell apart. And judges not to be the problem, and it's fallen apart. So
Do you want another one? We have one here in Canada that I haven't written about yet. Um, of another hallucination case,
Joe's
and
gonna have to
it's
work
an
all weekend.
immigration case, just to make it even more fun, because Um, and I'm sorry I missed AAA Triple L because I love Portland. Just shout out to Portland. Out of all of there's so much to talk about, y'all. But I think the one that really troubles me the most is the judgment that was pulled, right? And I remember writing about this, I think last year, about how some people who are, looking at this, they said at some point we're going to see a decision that's on record where there's a hallucination case in there and it's going to become precedent. And we're already there. And there's a case in the UK of a judge who admitted that he's been using AI. That case goes back, I think, to 2023. So the fact that we've already got it now on record that this happened really, really, really worries me. Because at least they caught it, but there's gotta be, we're gonna find one where they didn't catch it, right? At some point.
And what happens when you're the party who finds that the other side is relying on a hallucination problem? And that's a whole deeper inception can of worms. Sorry, I talked over you, Nikki.
Didn't that happen in this case, Joe? Someone had already cited it and that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
So yeah, it's a little cabined because it's a parallel case involving some of the same parties. But yeah, the opinion already had been cited in another case, and that's how you end up polluting the federal the case reporter is when people start throwing these in there. And I'll also say back to AALL a little bit. Which I get in metric it's to be triple, but here in customary it's just double. Now, see,
Way to call out Julie. I was
I'm making a
live.
candidate joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
clever.
hurting over here. I'm sorry.
It's the dental drugs that made it AAA. Right?
Yes, it was her hallucination because of the drugs.
I just always try to make it's a dumb dad joke kind of thing of me. I always try to make metric being different jokes, so I got an opportunity. Hey, listen, to the AALL point, that I went to a panel on originalism because I enjoy reading about garbage jurisprudence. And one of the things they were talking about in that was the role of the librarian in compiling history for these judges that they can then cherry pick and lie about. And one of the quantitative studies that they talked about there was that at least at the senior appellate level, there's a big uptick in these judges citing endogenous research. So not something that's not in any of the amicus briefs, any of the parties' briefs. They've gone out and just found their own stuff and put it in the opinion, which that's where this is going to start to become more of a problem, right? Like in the old days, everything in there was probably something from one of the two briefs, but now that the judges feel emboldened to throw their own crap into all of these opinions. If anybody gets too high on AI, that's going to be a vector that's going to come in and not necessarily be something that the parties will immediately catch.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just wanted to follow up on it.
It's 30% more. Oh yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Just
I was going to say, just to Julie's point on that, on the judges, the one with the judges order, to me that one is sort of not such a big deal because what happens in a lot of these, like in litigation level, in a lot of cases, the judge will just say, somebody draft me an order and I'll sign it. They'll be maybe have a bench conference or something, and judge is like, just give me an order and I'll sign it. And the order doesn't really have any precedential effect or anything. It's really just putting into effect what the parties just talked about at a case or something. And it's not like it's going to go get cited by other cases or other parties. And I'm kind of guessing that's what happened in this one. It was like the judge didn't even really read it. He just like got it and signed it and sent it off to the parties or something. I don't know. I mean, I think the New Jersey one is different. That sounds a little more serious, but
yeah, the Georgia one was definitely that. It was a proposed order that the hallucinating party gave to the judge and the judge signed off on. And it was a divorce. And it kind of sounded like it was possible the wife didn't have legal representation when it first happened, that the husband's lawyer threw it in, judge signed it, and there was no one there to kind of push back until later at the appellate stage when she had. And that highlights the level to which this can become kind of the hidden access to justice problem, where these mistakes happen to people who don't have the wherewithal to fight back. Pro se litigants, people who are like the asymmetrical power in a divorce, that sort of thing.
I don't remember if we talked about this before, but we have seen Well, I don't know if it's a trend. Now I'm going to have to go back and look at all the reported hallucination cases we've had. But one thing that I've started to notice is that one party is pro se litigant, unrepresented, all of this just because of the nature of the cases, right, that end up right in court. Because I'm remembering at least two cases where there was hallucinations happening. And either the pro se litigants were using it, or in this case, right, the opposing party. What guardrails are we? I'm asking a question that I already know the answer is not easy, but like we need guardrails about this because the people I worry about the most are the people who don't have representation, right? The Chicago one is deeply disturbing because of that as well. I mean, we're talking about housing. So like it's just I know it's funny, these hallucinations. We talk about lawyers being smarter and, all that kind of stuff. Happy to roast lawyers again about what they should already know. But in terms of the actual harm, that's the thing that worries me the most. Like there's an actual public harm here that could happen.
I dumped into the chat the link to the database that the person is compiling of all of these, like globally, and it to some degree it has the party using AI. So it'll say like judge, lawyer, and it will say pro se litigant. I mean, the ones with lawyer, you have to see if there's the imbalance in there. But if you ever do want to dive into this might be a good place to start.
There was, I don't know if anybody saw it in LinkedIn, and Jackie Schaefer, in response to our post about, response to my post on LinkedIn about today's episode of this show, she posted, they posted this like template site checking policy for a site checking policy for law firms to adopt within their firms to help avoid hallucinations. Put the link in the chat, but I mean, having a policy, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily stop this from happening because lawyers are supposed to be checking their sites anyway. But it's something.
There's
Yeah, if you,
140 cases in this from the US in this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if
That
you
is
click on,
disturbing.
if you click on Canada, it does seem to be tipped far more heavily towards pro se litigants, but not exclusively. But yeah, no, it's a really interesting database they pulled together. I mean, terrifying, but interesting.
Yeah. It's not getting any better. That's for sure.
And I
But
wonder. I was going to say, I wonder to what extent. Clearly, I think a lot of the problem is the hype machine that AI has, and I wonder to what extent people, because you'd say that I'm totally brainstorming here. You'd say that people, having seen what happened with prior hallucinations, would say, "Oh, I know this is a problem now," and protect themselves from it. But I wonder to what extent these tech bros keep going out there saying it's gotten better. There's a new release that does this, does that. If so many people are like, well, I'm sure the old one hallucinated, but now I can use it with no problems, despite the fact that that isn't true.
but let's go back to the very first time we ever talked about this on this show and made the point. As a lawyer, you have a responsibility to check the cases that you're
Yeah.
citing and to read the damn cases and see that they say what you say they're saying. So I
Yeah.
don't care what any tech bro marketing or whatever else is saying about what Gen AI could do. It doesn't in any way change a lawyer's basic responsibility to their clients and their professional responsibility to do their own, I guess, do due diligence on their own citations.
Well, the
As much
scary
as I'd
thing for
like to blame a tech bro, I'm with Bob on this. Like,
but here, so the scary thing I see are there are now these tools that theoretically you put your brief in and it goes through and it tells you if there's hallucinations in it or it purports to, and people are using that. My concern with that is it doesn't necessarily work. And you say, oh well, you're supposed to read it all, which I would do, but I wonder to what extent it's sort of like the early days of putting red flags on things. If it's, if the flagging is wrong, did judges go, you should have gone back and gone through Shepard's in paper form? No, at a certain point, the tech system of putting that red flag on there is what we all decided was a check. So if Westlaw makes product that purports to go through the brief and say, and this is one of the aspects of the Butler Snow thing, I believe, they argued that, well, we put it through the system and it said, it identified that there were no other problems.
Why are you citing a case that you haven't read?
Yeah.
I
you're just
agree.
you
I
have
agree,
no
but I
idea
don't
what it
think-
says. It just like no, it just makes no sense. I don't care what Shepard says or Keysight or anything
Yeah.
else.
Well, what gets me about it, what I keep saying is, oh, these folks are like, well, I don't think people do that and print everything out anymore. And I'm like, what happens if there's going to be an oral argument? It's not like you can like have like you need to have like a binder of all the stuff if you go to oral argument. So like, why not just go ahead and do it?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
real talk here. Real talk. How many people are practicing litigation practice, some sort of litigation as part of your practice? You are not printing out your briefs and your key documents and your key case. No, for real, in 2025. I know we have all written about this, the need to, all the
You mean
things.
printing out on paper? Let's
Like,
not get too extreme here, Julie.
I mean, the number of lawyers that I know who are running a litigation practice and they don't have to print paper at all is so small. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't. These are all excuses. We've talked about Westlaw. We've
Mhm.
talked about these databases saying that they're hallucination free. We've talked about how there's no hallucination free, right? Like, if we can write about that again, but I just I'm just still baffled by like basic ethical principles. Again, I am worried more about our perception with the public, because if they think we don't know what we're doing with AI, they will just bypass us completely. And there's other organizations and corporations who are looking at us as well as we're doing this dumb stuff. Like, I just really think there's a perception and a reputational value issue here. And I know this is saying the quiet part loud, but I mean, it's true, because we don't look good when we
Yeah.
do stuff like this.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. Like, I agree with the argument that we were having that like laziness is laziness. You always should have been reading this, whatever. What all I'm throwing in is when we had that conversation over the Avianca case way back when, it was you put this in and then you never read it. That's ridiculous. But as these new tools purport to be fixes for that problem, the more and more layers of that happen, the more and more vectors there are for people to think that they've done something when they haven't. And that's what scares me. All of these additional steps that get you to a point where you're like, oh, but I did check it. I ran it through the independent checker. And it's like, well, that thing doesn't work, but these people think that it does. And the more those tools proliferate, the more risk of people making mistakes are going to happen.
But it's
All right,
also,
I think we need to get. Go
but
ahead.
let's be real. Like, especially go back to Avianca. It wasn't like it hallucinated the fifth case supporting this generally accepted rule. Please, like, you can't find any law to support your proposition, and then suddenly it's magic, and you don't even bother to read those cases. Like, if you're gonna read anything, it should be the ones that hugely support your argument, right? Like, I've just lost all sympathy.
The Alabama decision, by the way, I will recommend. One of the things it goes into is one of the excuses they made was the kind of the classic, oh, well, it didn't really misstate the law. The quotes are wrong, but like the general proposition, no one was misled about like what the law actually was. And the judge was like, yeah, no dice. And really came down hard on like
Yeah.
that can't become the excuse.
All right, so we keep talking about all this potential or real actual perhaps malpractice by lawyers using AI. But I wanted to get to Niki's article this week in which she kind of puts forward this proposition that maybe not using AI could be malpractice. So Niki, what's your argument there?
Oh, wait. Is that
Wait.
like the old data analytics argument that who said what about?
If you're not using litigation analytics,
Yeah, somebody
yeah,
said that. I don't know who it was.
somebody.
Somebody.
All right. Well, we now know who said the one on AI. Anyway, we don't have to debate that one.
Sorry, Niki.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just thinking about this because having been through and you know, most of us have have been covering the space for a while, the iterations of different technologies and the responses, you know, going back to email and even going back to like word processing, you know, oh no, we can't use that, you know, it's not safe, it's, you know, it's not the way we practice law, it's not real lawyering, it's unethical, you have to get client consent, like all the things that all the roadblocks they put in the way. And then it gets to a point where with social media, for example, litigators, at least, if they don't know how to use social media, I would say are 100% committing malpractice at this stage of the game, because they need to understand the platforms that are out there. They need to understand where their clients are posting. They need to be able to find the evidence, the potential evidence. They need to advise their clients appropriately about what to do once they've been retained in terms of what the clients should and shouldn't be doing on social media, and what they should and shouldn't be destroying or deleting. You have to know how to reach out to those different companies to get the data that may have been deleted. You know, there's so much you have to know and understand about social media platforms that it's absolutely malpractice. If you're not doing that on behalf of your client, you're not representing your client sufficiently. And the cloud, I don't think we're quite getting to the point where it's malpractice not to use the cloud, but I think we're getting close, because and I can't remember if I referenced this last week. I'm pretty pissed off that my accountant was one of the people. They were breached separately, but it was still a SharePoint breach. It wasn't this one that made the news this week. There was a SharePoint vulnerability, government agencies, businesses across the country, and it was entire SharePoint files, all the data, or all the documents shared were breached. Not just, you know, your name, not just your date of birth and social security number, all that stuff that's already out there. It was also all this documents and data. And everybody at this point is saying the cloud's, in most cases, more secure than having your own on-premises software. And I would argue that not only is it an ethical breach when confidential information is disclosed, it could be malpractice because it could be critical to your client's case, right? So we've sort of gotten that to that point with the cloud. Have we gotten there with AI yet? I don't think so. I think we're going to get there. And I actually did I have a poll that has 3 days left on LinkedIn that right now has 107 votes. And I asked, is it or will it be malpractice if lawyers fail to adopt AI? And 48% said eventually, but not yet. 18% said already is, 33% said it's optional, and then 2% chose, what is this AI you speak of? But you know, I don't think we're there yet, but we're going to get to a point where it is able to unearth, even if right now it unearths fake stuff, but it also does, and we've talked about this before the show, sometimes it can find things that you can't find anywhere else, whether it's generally available information or legal information. But you're going to get to the point where if you're not using it to increase efficiencies, to provide better pricing for your clients, to be more competitive in the market, to provide better output, then I think we're ultimately going to get to the point where it is malpractice, and it's going to happen a lot faster than it happened with the other tools because the tech is advancing so quickly. I mean, that's another thing that a couple of people said during the conversation today, and that happened a lot quicker than we thought it would. Like, this stuff is, you know, whatever the potential outcomes we have been saying were going to happen, they're already happening, right? Like, so I think it's interesting that to think about and to sort of just track, like, at what point are we going to get to that? Like, and I definitely don't think we're there yet, but I think it's an important question to ask and to think about because the tech's moving really quickly.
I 100% agree. Before other people argue with you, I agree we're not there yet, but I do 100% agree. And I do think some of it it's not the only reason, but you said, you know, the billing piece will come in. Eventually people will be like, you're just dragging your feet to bill more money, if nothing else. But no, I absolutely agree. It will eventually be malpractice to not use it or consider using it.
Yeah, I'm okay to be the minority who will say I think we're very much almost there. Again, this is where I think Canada and the US differ quite a bit because every major jurisdiction in Canada, in terms of the legal regulator, has guidelines already on how to use AI. They did that last year, and the smaller provinces they just took their time, but it's basically there. So, for example, the case that I just mentioned that was in federal court where the lawyer was caught using, caught with hallucinations, the judge quotes the the guidelines from the law society saying you have the responsibility to know that. I haven't read a hallucination case in Canada that doesn't cite a law society guidelines or rules on this. So I think for us, we're further ahead. We're like, to me, we're like 75% there already. But I think we're getting there we'll get there a lot quicker than I think people realize, because I still remember writing last year and interviewing some lawyers who said their clients asked them, how are you going to use AI in my file? Like, in 2024, that still surprised me that clients were asking their lawyers about this. So yeah, I think Niki, you've spot on. And I think the analogies with social media and cloud computing is spot on. Like, knowing about cloud computing, definitely, if you don't know about cloud computing, that's malpractice. Whether you're using it or not, I can see the arguments depending on the type of file or practice area or what have you. But I do think having a general knowledge of what AI is, there could be an argument today, I think, for malpractice if you don't know what it is.
I mean, you at least need to know enough about it so when you catch the other side putting in hallucinations. Like that's a thing too.
That happen? I mean, I think that, I mean, it is the terminology in a sense. Not, you don't really commit malpractice unless you hurt somebody. So unless you've caused some harm to your client, it's not malpractice. But in terms of talking about a duty of care for lawyers, I think it's definitely malpractice for lawyers not to be using AI. And I think in any of the states, which are virtually all the states at this point, that have adopted the duty of technology competence, it's a breach of the duty of technology competence not to know something about generative AI. I mean, lawyers have a professional obligation to keep abreast of the latest developments in technology, and this is a tidal wave of a latest development. And if they're not keeping abreast of it, they are failing in their professional responsibility. So I agree with you.
One thing I wanted to mention just peripherally, when I was talking about the cloud, one thing that is interesting that's sort of a separate trend is with breaches. I was talking to my financial advisor about the accountant breach, and his response was, well, I mean, it's all out there anyway. Like, the fact that we're getting to that point where entire accountant your entire file with your accountant has been exposed, like, which means everything in your organizer, all the data that supports the organizer is out there. And the response is, I mean, like, we're at this point, I think that's appalling. I agree with his response, but I think it's appalling that that's where we've ended up at this stage of the game. That it's just kind of like I mean, it's all out there, and what are you gonna do? We're all screwed. Like, I cannot believe we've gotten to this point, and it's awful, especially with AI. And this is where it overlaps with AI and the ability to use AI to for social engineering, for spamming, for phishing, for all these sophisticated ways to use that data, which is cheap on the dark web, and to utilize that data to just steal people's identities, to steal people's money, and the minimal protections you have against it. My family is, and I'm sure you guys are the same, have been breached so many times. We have multiple different programs of identity checking that were free because of these breaches for all of us, but that doesn't help. And then you have to go and add pins and start doing voice, that's what I had to do. Try and lock down all my stuff as best I could with voice control and pins and, and so that people don't file tax returns on your behalf. You know what I mean? There are so many problems that are coming from this, and the response at this point, because it happens so often, oh, well, and I find that appalling, and I can't believe we've gotten to this point. And it's the worst possible time to be getting there with AI advancing the way that it is. So let's just hope the simulation's rebooted. I just keep waiting for it to happen, because I'm telling you, and the other thing I want to mention along those lines, all these famous people keep dying. I think the simulation's running out of memory, so they're knocking off some of the famous people that take up a lot of memory. So there's more evidence, y'all, that we're
Wait a minute.
down soon.
Famous people keep dying?
Gapman Joan here locally, he was from Rochester. Hulk Hogan, and then there's someone else earlier in the week that was also
Ozzy Osbourne,
Ozzy Osbourne.
Malcolm Jamal Warner.
Malcolm Jamal
Yeah,
Warner.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people have died in one week,
Mangione.
and I think it's running out of memory, you guys. So
That's why I have a very simple title.
Couldn't it
I've
just go off
put
some
up with my
non-famous
description of
people?
what I do. I'll have to
Yeah,
tone
get
that
rid of
down.
some of those titles and you could save lives. Why are you killing people, Nikki?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to think that one over. Or get my elevator speech a little more tempered. All right, I'll work on that.
All right, well, speaking of killing off people, Julia's a story about boomers exiting exiting the legal profession.
Oh,
One of
that's
my
such a
favorite
sweet
transitions
transition.
ever. I love it.
Speaking of people dying, no, I had to include this article because it's from Nova Scotia and I'm from Nova Scotia and it's like interviewing people that I know, basically saying, "Hey, why haven't you retired yet?" And they're like, "Well, because there's no one to take over my practice." And we've heard all of this before. But as I was reading the article, it just kind of struck me that Nikki, you really demonstrated like why AI and the marriage of data analytics is really dangerous. But then I thought, hey, this is an actual article that talks about like this could be where the positive part comes in because basically you have lawyers who are, nearing or past retirement age saying, well, I just don't know how to pick up the practice and give it to someone else, essentially. That is definitely an AI task. Like digitize all of it, organize it, set a price, boop, boop. And I just thought it was really interesting how the article was talking about, baby boomers and others who were just like, I just have to keep practicing. I don't know how, but I'll just keep practicing. And I was just like, this is literally like where a tech solution is to be found. And I know people in the chat have been talking about the hype machine, and the people aren't thinking dollar signs here, but I think there are dollar signs there. Talked about small solo, and Nova Scotia is a place with it's 1 million people. I think it's less than 2,000 lawyers there. There's lots of jurisdictions that kind of are similar to those stat points that I'm saying. This is actually where AI would be useful. So trying to instill some hope in here before we end the show today. But yeah, I read the article and I thought, hey, this could be a place that's positive. And they said the average age in Canada of lawyers retiring is 69, which frankly I thought was younger than I thought it would be. That actually gives me some hope too.
So just have AI take over their practices and they can retire. Is that what you're saying?
I I see now people are gonna say Julie's crazy. I just read the article. They're basically saying I don't know what to do. I don't know how to retire.
Well, I mean, I think a lot. It's funny because I was on the Cape for vacation a couple weeks ago, and I had dinner with a friend of mine who I used to work with well, I shouldn't say who they were probably, but who retired last year. And I'm like, hey, how is it? It must be fun. You retired. And she's like, I'm bored. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. And I'm trying to think of what to do. And it's like, not really thrilled with the whole retirement. Now Steve retired officially, but then he took up this whole other career as a legal tech writer. So I don't know. Maybe some of them just don't want to be bored. I don't know.
I don't feel very retired, to tell you the truth.
No, I know you've probably done more since you've retired than before. But anyway, I
Certainly
mean,
had a lot
there
more
is that
fun.
whole aspect of people liking what they do and want to keep doing it. All right. Anything else?
I thought Steve's article
What was Steve? Did Steve have an article?
of the law, wasn't it the one about
Right.
how the young ones aren't get off our lawn, they're not learning how to do research because of AI. But I think it raises a good point, but I kind of feel like it's not just the young ones. Everybody's skipping the research if they can at this point.
And that was kind of the point a little bit. I mean, the law librarian from the University of Pittsburgh made a good point. I mean, it's what legal research is. You sit down, you figure out what the problem is, you read the cases, you see some cases that are cited in the case that you're reading, you go read those cases, you go read the dissenting opinion, you do all these things, and it gives you sort of a context for the problem, and that's time and tedious work. I mean, I'm old enough to remember how tedious it is. It's hard, and now you got this device that just boom, does it all and short circuits that process. And one of the law firm librarians made the point, she was from a big firm, and what she has seen is the more experienced lawyers who, grew up with that system of tedious research are better able to articulate what they need from the generative AI tools, and then they're better able to sit to read the response and say this part doesn't sound right. This just doesn't sound right, and so they work with the tool in a much more sort of robust and effective fashion. It was a pretty interesting panel discussion all the way around.
That is super interesting. I loved that tedious work. Maybe I'm the weirdo, but I mean, I loved like getting deep in research and just getting lost in it. And oh, this made me read this thing and made me think about this thing. And I don't know, maybe that is why I'm
Yeah.
better at yelling at my AI to not do the wrong thing.
Well, and I think it is something to think about because with all the hype over AI and the need to use it and client pressures, billing pressures, well, the AI, generative AI can do that, so you don't need to spend time doing it. I mean, I think we do have to be careful that there is some of that kind of, I would call it tedious work that has to be done uh, to get the right result. And you can't just turn on AI tools to do it and expect good stuff to come back.
Yeah, I was reading your article and I was thinking about there's another article right there called Writing is Thinking, because people have been thinking about how it affects writing. And I was talking to some of my software engineer friends and they're like, "Well, Julie, you're someone who likes the tedious, like you were saying, right? Like you're a writer and you're a lawyer. You're obviously someone who enjoys that process of going through things. Not everybody enjoys that tedious process of going through information." Which now takes us full circle to why we love librarians, right? They also are great people who know how to do this process. Yeah, I really, really, really worry about this. The perception that work is not valuable unless we have a machine do it. That's something that's new that I don't like. So I see your point though. The problem is the problem, right? Like you really do have to sit with it in order to figure things out.
I apologize to you for not, I somehow missed that in our log, so I'm sorry we didn't get to that sooner.
No
But
problem. No problem. There were a lot of interesting things to talk about, so it's not a problem.
No, I'll go read that. There is an epic storm rolling into Brooklyn as we speak. So anyone in the New York area, stay dry.
Oh,
It's lightning and thunder and woo.
looking out my window because I have outdoor dinner reservations. Hope it doesn't happen here. All right. Well, we will be back. I think that is it for this week. We will be back next week with Niki's new title is the Grim Reaper, leading off the show, and what's the Doom thing? We've stopped doing the Doom, the DP Doom thing, which is a good thing.
no use doing
Plenty
it.
of
It's
Doom
all
to go
bad.
around. It's all bad.
It's all
so
bad.
Who cares?
It's all in the 80s or 90s, so forget
Right?
it.
I mean, it's extra bad until Niki frees up some memory space for us all.
Yeah, we're not celebrities.
If I'm
so
not around
they're not
next
going to
week,
kill us off. All right. Well, appreciate everybody being here and appreciate everybody in the audience and hope to see you all next week.
Come on.
Wow.